So yeah, really, what we're trying to do is just trying to get an insight into student athletes' lives. What the challenges were when they were out there, how they got there, how did they enjoy it when they were going through the whole process of being a student athlete, and then ultimately where they've gotten to since then. So you've got a good story. Obviously, you started at Hibs, boy from Lanark. Started at Hibs, big team in Scotland, and then you kind of moved onwards. Just kind of going back to the very beginning, when you were at Hibs and you were studying for your hires, what would you say your football or your soccer aspirations were at that time?
Well, so I actually left when I was 16, and so I'd always done decent in school, but it was kind of felt like at that age, if you didn't leave school, you're going to get left behind because all the other guys in the kind of Scotland program, they were all going full time. And my biggest concern was if I don't go full time with the rest of them, I'm not going to be able to catch up. And they're all going to be playing with the under 18s and reserves and everything like that. So at the time, I looked around and saw the guys in the team and was like, some of these guys are going to make it and go on and do big things. And some of them did. At the time, I was like, why wouldn't I be one of those guys? You know what I mean? I was like, the things fall into place for people and sometimes they don't. But I was like, if I kind of keep my head down, work hard and do what I'm supposed to be doing, be one of those guys that goes on and plays in Premier League or South Rangers, whoever. And it didn't quite work out that way. But at the time, there was nothing to tell me that I didn't have a chance of doing that.
Would you say you always had aspirations to be a professional football player at that time then?
Yes, that's all I cared about. From I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I started playing with. I actually was at Hearts before Hibs, but I moved up from Lanark. Didn't move, but I went up to Hearts when I was about 11 or 12, and ever since then, the whole focus is how do we get to be a professional. And I know my parents kind of struggled with it because I'd always kind of been decent in school and kind of tried hard, but they could kind of see that my attitude was changing, starting to focus a little less in school. I wasn't a bad student, but I was definitely focused more on the football than I did about school around that time.
Yeah, I think that's natural. Any kid, myself included, when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, all you want to do is, if you are good at sport, is be a professional in that sport. So going out to the States, you obviously knew that was going to give you an opportunity to get your degree at the same time. What was it that flipped the switch for you from being in Scotland, playing for a professional club, to deciding to go down the academic route?
Well, I kind of got to the stage where it was kind of a surprise when I was released by Hibs. I'd been kind of in and out of the Scotland team. I guess my attitude wasn't quite that. I felt like I had friends like Fletcher and McCluskey and some of these other guys that made into the first team. And without actually being there, I kind of started to act that way. And I wasn't at that level that I could do that. So when they released me, I was kind of surprised, and I looked around and I kind of had some interest for some other Premier League teams. But when I looked at the kind of money we were talking about, I was like, geez, at 20 years old, I need to have enough money to be able to run a car or pay for an apartment. And going full time at that time, the money just wasn't there to do that. Right. And so I was like, all right, well, I'd heard stories that you could go back to school and play part-time, and in some cases, the part-time money actually might be slightly better. And so I was like, all right, I'll go down that route and I'll take a look. And at that point was when one of my friends who'd been at Hibs had went out to the US. And I talked to him and didn't know much about it, to be honest. And then I started looking into the facilities and some of this stuff. And I was like, oh, if I'm going to do that here, why not give it a try in the US? And I took a look at it. And the more and more I looked, the more I was interested. Didn't really see what the downside for me was.
Yeah. I think it's, it's important to stress that while professional clubs are great and the standard you're playing at when you're 16, 17 years old is really high, college soccer is ultimately the most competitive environment for amateur football players anywhere in the world, for kids between 18 and 22. When you eventually got to the University of Cincinnati, I mean, Cincinnati's soccer program for years has been one of the top programs. Great facilities, top Division I school. How would you compare, Nick? How would you compare the facilities to Cincy with somewhere like Hibs?
I mean, honestly, I'd never seen anything like it. I would say Murray Park was about as close to what I'd seen. Murray Park wasn't even on Cincinnati's level, but it was about the closest. And the only thing you could really compare it to is that I've been watching that Sunderland till I die. And you kind of look at that kind of setup, and that's what we had in college. And everything we wanted, we had was Adidas. We got unlimited boots, unlimited clothes. We were getting Gatorade shakes or pre-match meals. We were flying to games, hotels. I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, it was like a level of Premier League kind of facilities and process. And I couldn't believe that for the first time in my life, I felt like I was kind of at that top level and I wasn't getting paid.
It's fascinating, you know, obviously in the line of work that we're in, we're constantly not selling the opportunity. That's not what we do. We obviously educate student athletes on what it could be like, but for the most part, there's almost a look of disbelief on their faces when we try to explain just how big everything is. You know, I obviously went to Ole Miss, and we're the same big Division 1 sports school. Facilities are incredible, but I think you'll agree with us, until you actually set foot on campus yourself, it really is hard to fathom how big it is. And you know, obviously, you get thrown into an environment. You're a top football player in Scotland. You then go into a really competitive program in college in the States. What was the biggest difference between leaving Hibs and then jumping into Cincinnati in terms of standard, in terms of how you felt? You know, did you feel like you bedded in pretty quickly, or did it take some time?
No, so I lost you a little bit, but I think I got it. So when I landed in Cincinnati, whenever I played at Hibs and in Scotland, it kind of felt like when you're trying to become pro, everyone's jockeying for that one spot. It feels like every time like a guy in your position scores a goal in training and it like crushes you, and there's no reason to, you know what I mean? You're like, oh no, like he's going to jump ahead of me. Yeah. And when I got to Cincinnati, I was kind of expecting that. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, most of the guys there had aspirations to go pro. That's kind of like the standard, you know, at Division 1, they're all trying to go pro. Yep. But I walked into the locker room, and the guy who actually introduced me to my wife now, and is one of my best friends in Maine, it was the first day I was there, and I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, oh God, a new locker room. Sure, there's going to be guys kind of try to tell me what's what and dominate me, and the guys that might take the position, we'll see how this goes. Yeah. And he was like, come on, buddy, we're heading out. He was the one who immediately grabbed me and was like, we're heading to the bars. And ever since then, they're like, the first weekend, they're like, come to the parties, and this is my friend, and he's this guy, and you want to do this and talk to this advisor. And I was like, this is unlike anything I'd ever seen. I was used to this, like, it was so competitive in Scotland, almost to a fault, where I cared less about me doing well and working hard. And I was more watching training going, I hope he messes this up, or I hope he doesn't put the goals out and he pisses off the manager and I can jump him. And then I got to Cincinnati, and the whole focus was like, all right, we're all in this together, 4 years together. At the end of it, we can get a job or we can go pro. But if I do well, it doesn't mean that this guy isn't doing well. You know what I mean? It was an entirely different change in atmosphere.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make there. I mean, I remember the first sort of 3 or 4 months I was there. I remember, as friendly as I was with the guys on the team, I felt like they were trying to encourage me, but at the same time they weren't showing any weakness. And that's something with Americans and American athletes and American people in general. They're so positive. You know, they want to get the best out of you. And my mindset had to really change quickly in order for me to start competing with these guys. And it's helped me in the long run. You know, it's such a, I always tell student athletes now before they decide whether this is for them, and explaining my time out there, your teammates become like a family to you. You know, it's your new family. You don't have family out in the States, but your teammates and the fellow student athletes you go for lunch and dinner with, they become your new family, and they're a really important aspect of the whole journey, because they're the ones that will essentially look after you at the beginning.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, and I got there kind of, I'm sure, the same way you did, and I was like, when I went to Cincinnati, I was like, I'm the only foreign guy. There was a couple Jamaican guys, a couple Canadians, but I kind of considered them more American. And then you get there and you realize that someone from America doesn't mean they're from anywhere near Cincinnati. They might have flown 3 hours to get there, and they feel like the same way you do. Just because it's internal doesn't mean they don't feel as if they're away from home and looking. And so I found that to be kind of surprising in a positive way, that everyone's feeling the same way.
Yeah. How would you sum up the influence that being at Cincinnati and having that college soccer experience, how would you sum up the influence it's had on your life to date now?
I mean, I've said that to my wife a bunch of times. I'm like, I remember when Hibs released me, I thought, that's it, my life's over. I don't know what I'm going to do now. This is all I've ever wanted to do. And now I'm sitting, I've got my wife, we've been together for 11, 12 years, a beautiful house, a good job. I've got a whole group of friends in Maine here. It's almost like a Scotland with kind of nicer weather. Yeah, and I'm like, I honestly, it's hard to believe, but I sit back and I'm like, I wonder where my life would be if Hibs had kept me for another year or two.
That's a good point.
I went to the US and none of this would have happened. And I'm almost sitting, I have to sit back. There's times where you're like, God, it would have been nice to go out and play in front of 20, 30, 40,000 people in Scotland and have my mates thinking I'm the man. But I'm like, overall, I'm sitting going, I'm so lucky. And I got to appreciate the fact that them releasing me, especially at the time they did, gave me the chance to go over and do all this. And it's kind of made my life what it is today, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, you know, there's so many kids are focused on going through academies here and they think that is going to be what's going to get them to the next level. But there's so much disappointment there at the same time. And that's part of the process of what we're doing just now, especially going through the COVID-19 crisis, is that we're trying to help. We're trying to help Premiership clubs in Scotland and England with their released players and giving them this opportunity and trying to take them through the programme. But you know, kids at that age are just so hard-headed. They only have one thing in mind, and I think it's so important for them to understand that this is such a great opportunity for them. You know.
Yeah, 100%. And I look at it now, and I'm like, at the time, looking back, I would have paid anything to be where I'm at now. And the fact that there's an opportunity for some of these people to be able to do that for nothing, I'm like, that is unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And one of the other things, you know, is these colleges, some of them cost 40, 50, 60 grand a year. Yeah. I mean, I was making, when I was at Hibs, I don't even know, a couple $100 a week. I mean, you take that and you make that salary and then you compare it to what you're getting at tuition. And I'm like, as a tuition, I was making it like 4 or 5 times what my salary was.
Yeah. So if you were to kind of come across a 16, 17-year-old kid just now who's sitting on the fence as to whether they want to go to the States or not, what would you say to them right now, Nick?
I would tell them that sorry, my dog's he's panicking. We've got a lot of construction going on at the house, so the dog's freaking out. But no, you know what I would say to them is I would be like, I had friends who went over and did it for a year, did it for a couple of years, and some it didn't. You know, it wasn't really for them, but they went back to Scotland and they were a better person for it, whether it was because of the kind of nutritional piece and the physical piece that they learned in the US, living abroad, being out on your own, the culture piece, making them more well-rounded. And then I've had friends who are in my situation who stayed here and never looked back. I mean, because of the PDL stuff over here, I've got a network of guys, there must be 50 of us, who all moved over here after college and they can't imagine life without it. And then I have the third subset of people that stayed for the full 4 years, loved it, went back to Scotland, found a job, and they're good as well. So I kind of look at it and say, if you go, there's 3 different ways it can end for you, and every one of them's positive.
Yeah,
it's lose, you know what I mean? And I do think I was one of those guys when I was at Hibs who I didn't really do that well away from home. I actually moved back from the digs after a couple of years. So when I went to the US, I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to handle it. And the difference in me as a person, going from being this young kid who'd never really done anything, played football and kind of in his wee shell and his group of friends, to now where I feel comfortable walking into boardrooms with people and meetings, and it's almost all attributed to me coming over here and having to kind of live my life on my own.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with you there. I was exactly the same. I was very introverted, quite a shy boy, and just going back to what I was saying about the first few months on campus and just really having to open up. And it's something that I tell all the students or prospective student athletes now: be as open-minded as you can be as outgoing as you can be, meet as many friends as you possibly can, because ultimately your friendships will grow exponentially from that. And it's just, it's just that it's an unbelievable experience. As you said, it's not for everybody, and I think that's really, really important to stress. This is either something that you feel you can take hands on and just go for it and get the best out of it, or you decide to stay at home. But yeah, that it's really fascinating to get an insight. And just tell us a little bit about what you're doing just now then, Nick. What do you do for a living now?
So I work for a bank here in Maine. I worked for a kind of a larger bank for 8 or 9 years out of college from Canada. And what I do is I lend money to businesses. So on a daily basis, I'm working with guys that are like CEOs of companies that might run kind of healthcare facilities, or they'll be running an operating business, McDonald's franchises. And so I get to meet with these guys, and then I lend them money in order to continue to kind of run their business, whether it's building out a new building or it's for working capital for inventory and stuff. So, I mean, some of these guys, that's what I laugh about. I look at all these guys as well who are thinking, and I get it. I look at some of the net worths of these guys that play in the Premier League, the absolute top level. And I'm sitting laughing because I've got guys here in Maine that walk in and sit down a pair of jeans and a white t-shirt who are worth 2 or 3 times what these professional guys are. They're celebrities. Everyone knows them in the world. I'm getting to work with these guys. And then you have the other kind of side of it where there's these small businesses, be a family member, like kind of family-owned business and kind of smaller. And I almost am part of the team. Yeah. It's really, they call me and they're like, hey, we're planning on doing this. What do you think? How's this going to work? And so I get kind of both ends of it, where I get that almost in my way. It's like when you were in awe, like Henrik Larsson when I was a child. I'm sitting in awe of some of these guys, all this on a business side. And then on the other piece, I feel like other people, I've never felt more satisfied. And that, even with the football, I mean, it sounds stupid because football was all I ever wanted, but I had two out of 5 days, I really couldn't be bothered going to training some days, you know what I mean? I just wasn't into it. Whereas I wake up every day and I love doing it.
That's fascinating. So tell us a little bit, you're not a lot of people will know this, but you're really good friends with Stephen Fletcher. How did that come about, and kind of how's the friendship? Are you still keep in touch with him?
Yeah, I actually, ironically, with the COVID-19 stuff, I play Call of Duty with him. The time difference makes it a little different, but we're playing Call of Duty almost every day, and we're on group chats and everything. But so from about 11 or 12, 13, whenever I moved to Hibs, we played on the same team all the way through. And so when we got to about 19 or 20, when I was released, he wasn't long and he moved down to Burnley. And so I would come home and go to games when he was at Burnley, and myself, and Jamie McCluskey, all played at Hibs and grew up and we're all friends together. And we've kind of kept that going. We go on trips together. When our weddings, we're groomsmen. And so I think it's funny now because I laugh that he's sitting texting me about stuff, and then I'm reading the paper about like speculation about transfers. He's like, it's still, everything's still the same. You know what I mean? It's funny because I remember growing up and thinking like Premier League footballers and all this were really cool. Yeah. And it's still cool, but they're just me and you know what I mean? And it's just funny to see that from that perspective.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks so much for the insight, Nick. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone at FirstPoint will be thoroughly looking forward to kind of listening to how you got to the States. I'm not letting you away too easily, though. I'm going to ask you 5 quick fire questions. Nothing too difficult. What are you currently watching on Netflix just now?
Pandemic.
Okay. Very fitting at this time of year. What's your favourite food?
Lasagna. My friends used to call me Gutfield.
Favourite sport outside football?
100%. Almost maybe more than football these days.
Good stuff. And what team do you support at home?
You know, that's a hard one. I used to be a big Newcastle fan, and then Fletch joined Sunderland, which made it difficult. So I'd probably be leaning towards, I don't even know what to say. Celtic are kind of just. What'd you say?
Jeffrey Wednesday. He's played for
the Owls.
And you
probably Celtic.
Other than looking after Callum, your little boy, have you found any new hobbies while you've been in lockdown?
No. We've had these paycheck protection program loans, and between that and the baby, I've been working kind of 7 days a week. Thank God the golf courses are closed, because I'd be devastated that I was missing out. But no, I've got, my wife always jokes, I don't need any more hobbies. I've got plenty of them.
We've had like nearly 2 weeks now of just brilliant weather, and it's so hard not getting on a golf course, as I'm sure you'll understand. Listen, Nick, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything that's going on. Stay safe, and we'll keep in touch for sure. Thanks for your time, Nick.
Awesome. Thanks, Callum.
Thanks, Nick.
Appreciate it. Take care, mate. Bye.